E-commerce is probably going to do okay, at least in the short term. But yes, I mean, we could be headed for a recession. There's no question about it. But even with all of that information, what you said earlier, look at the 3 to 5 year outlook, and do you believe the market's going to be higher? And Janet, the numbers we have here certainly suggest historically that it will be a pretty much a blip on the radar screen.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk about how long has it historically taken us to recover from a bear market. And the one in particular that I wanted to look at, just because of the comparison on the cause of it, is if you go back to peak of 1956 in August, and then the low point was actually in October of 57. This is from the Asian flu, and don't go all, don't call it that because it's racist or whatever. That's what we called it in the 50s. So historically, that's the name of it.
It's on the CDC website.
It's on the CDC website
yes.
as the Asian flu. That's what it was called and still is. And so anyway, that one, keep in mind, at that point, 70,000 Americans died from the Asian flu. So 70,000 deaths. We're not expecting this, if we can control it, we're not expecting this to come anywhere near reaching that point. But another difference that we see, even though there may have been more deaths then than what we might have through the coronavirus, is when you think about how much access we have to news. I mean, you're carrying around a news source in your pocket. And so that immediate reaction, it happens a whole lot faster. So we do have a whole lot more emotional selling going on. So there's a difference there. But at that point, the market was down 22%. The bear market lasted 14 months. And as far as length of recovery, 11 months, to get back to that point. So let's just call it a year, basically a year's time to recover. So we don't know for sure, what details we're going to see in this situation as far as how long it's going to last. You've got to know, is your plan prepared for it, and are you ready for, continued downturn or recovery? Because we're going to have both. We're going to have a continued downturn for a period of time, but then it will turn and we'll be in recovery mode.
Scott, I said when this whole thing started, I am way more fearful of what we are doing to ourselves than what this virus is doing to our country. We've seen things like this before. We've been through things like this before. And I hope and pray that our death rate stays incredibly low. But, one of the things that the market is reacting to is everybody else's reaction.
Yes,
sure.
And we've got to think and not panic and think about, okay, what's the right thing to do here? And, I've said before that I think that we all just need to follow the golden rule and love your neighbor. But, we've got a lot of people out there that are hurting or will be hurting because of job loss and things of that nature. Help them out. Do whatever you can to help them out, Chad. I know that's something that we've talked about here in our office, that if we see some need, let's try to address that need in a very direct way. It doesn't always have to come from the government.
It is. And we really don't know what quarter we're in. Are we in the first or second quarter of this, or even are we at halftime? But you got to think from a market standpoint, the market is trading towards the end of the game.
Yes.
And that's the forecast that they're talking about when they are making these, when you're talking about these institutional traders, they're trading towards the end of the game. And I don't know what quarter we're in, or like I said, but the forecast that they're looking at right now, basically those traders are looking at companies telling them that we are going to look at disappointed numbers, and everything is driven off of those earnings. And so when you get those institutional investors that are seeking stability, and only companies are basically offering them nothing but uncertainty,
right,
that's what is driving this market down at this point, because we haven't seen the lack of earnings yet, but the forecast is showing a downward turn.
Let me put some numbers on that, because going back to the video we watched from Brian Westbury, it really stood out to me when he said that he believes that the market, because of the drop that we've had so far, is pricing in somewhere between a 50 to 80% reduction in corporate profits. And he compared that to what happened in 2008. He said at the trough, we were down 46%. So if you put all that together in a nutshell, he's saying that the market has already, what we've already seen drop in the market, is pricing in an expectation of worse corporate profits than we had in 2008. Now, again, the uncertainty of that is what's driving it. They don't know. because quite frankly, this is an unprecedented government response to a pandemic, at least in my lifetime. Now, I wasn't around in 1918, but I mean, I don't remember ever going to these extreme measures to protect against a pandemic. So there, of course, is going to be uncertainty. We don't know this because we haven't gone through it before, but to believe that it is going to be worse than what we saw in 2008 is a bit of a stretch, in my opinion.
In my opinion as well. And let me first of all say that I'm going to cut Janet off and not give her the opportunity to say that John was around in 1918 and knows all about this. So,
I wasn't even going to go there.
Maybe not. Okay, here's what I want to say about this. There is an interesting article online today from one of these institutional investors, Pershing Square's Bill Ackman. Don't know who he is, but he makes some interesting points. He is saying that if the president would shut the country down and say 30-day holiday, we're going to stop everything, and I mean everything, things like mortgage payments, rent payments, everything, just everybody pause for 30 days, then he says that you would see incidences of the virus being transmitted to other people go down dramatically. Mm-hmm. And he says the market would soar. I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that. If we paused everything for 30 days and you didn't have to pay bills for 30 days, you didn't have to pay taxes for 30 days, everybody just stopped and just lived life within your own confines, and we got back to normal 30 days later, does that make a difference?
Yes, it does, but there's always but what about, and there's all kinds of places you can go with that question, because what about the people who are supposed to be receiving those payments, and are they capable of whatever their obligations are? Can we stop the end game, from the very first person paying something to the very last recipient? Because we all know, I buy something from you, you take that money and you buy something from Scott, and Scott takes that money and he buys something from Chad. This is the way the world goes round. So if Chad has an obligation that through this system is not stopped, then if I don't buy something from you and you don't buy, then is Chad okay? And that's an oversimplification of the big picture, but that would be one of my questions. And if you talk about if we isolate for 30 days, does it help with the coronavirus? Absolutely. What are the other things that we're not talking about?
Janet, let's ask our Facebook Live audience, what do you think about a 30-day pause? It would be unprecedented in American history. That I don't even know.
Probably for anybody
in
globally.
World history, whether that's ever been done or not. I don't really know if the president and the Congress have the total authority to do that. Yeah. But what do you think? If we paused everything for 30 days, does that make a difference? Comment to us on Facebook Live. We would love to hear your response. We'll talk about it.
And I'll tell you, John, one of the, like we're talking about today, get into a little bit later, but the debt, but have you thought about your personal finances? If you put a 30-day freeze on your personal finances, are you going to be better off on the backside of this thing?
I think, too, as far as my response to that is, I don't know about the market soaring. I'm trying to work through that. I assume there's some certainty there. There's a window that they know something's going to happen and possibly get better. Maybe it would. Maybe that's what they want. I think for me, though, it's the big question here is when is it safe to poke your head out of the hole? And I don't know. I don't know that gives me, okay, why 30 days? Why is
What's
that
the
deadline?
number?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
What's the magic number to reach? And I think that's the challenge. I mean, I do think that it's still a short-term blip on the radar. I think by summer, the president said maybe August. I mean, let's say some time frame in there, we're going to get over this and it's going to go away because all viruses do. However, that window of 30 days, that's a challenge for me to know if it'd make much difference.
Yeah. So if you want to comment with us on Facebook Live, go ahead and do that right now, and we'll talk about this as the show proceeds. One of the things I do think that we need to talk about is what you need to do. And I want to congratulate our clients, and that's really all we have a real beat on is our clients.
Yep.
But our clients have performed stellar in this because you haven't panicked. You have called with some concerns, and we've been trying to answer those calls as best we can and as effectively as we can. Really, almost no one has said, just totally 100% get me out. Yep. Because I think we have learned over the years that that's really not very productive.
Yeah. I would agree with that, and I would echo that. You guys were here in 2008. I was not an advisor in 2008, so this is really my first big one, if you want to put it that way. So I didn't really have a huge frame of reference to know what to expect, but I have received no phone calls of anyone wanting to sell anything. If anything, they've wanted to put more money in.
Yeah.
They recognize the possible buying opportunity, and I have had one or two calls of people just wanting to know what we thought about things. So kind of what we're doing here, just a little discussion, and they felt much better after that discussion. But I would say for sure, Chad, our clients recognize that this should be a short-lived event.
Yes, and as they should be a part of their own finances.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing to take away from this is not really look at what everybody else is doing, but what are you doing in your household? And what do you do? What reactions are you making? Because that's truthfully all you can control at this point. And so we have had a good response from our current clients and new clients coming in the door that have really said, okay, is this a good opportunity for me? What should I do to be getting into a game plan at this point?
So that's a great segue. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about debt and its role in your current situation and how avoiding it can improve your path to financial independence. That's when the Get Ready for the Future show continues right after this.
What do you know about saving money?
So you'll have more stuff that you can get.
So, would you rather spend money or save money? You'd rather save money?
Yeah, I would get $1 and $1 after 2 days.
Do you know what a credit card is?
Yes.
What's a credit card?
Something that has money on it. And if you cash it in, you can pay with it.
But how does the money get on the credit card?
Bill Gates.
What about a car? How much money do you think it takes to buy a car?
100.
So for $100, what would your car look like?
A pink car that has glitter all over it.
So if I gave you what would you buy with it?
Maybe a car. 2, 3 houses. 100 wood. 2,000 toys. And infinity couches.
What do you think a 401k is?
A candy bar. Okay, a wafer with chocolate syrup on top and then caramel on top and then chocolate chips.
Would you cover it in chocolate?
Yeah.
Tell me everything you know about money.
That it costs a lot and that people get only a few things. And if you save money, you can get stuff that you need.
Want more straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money? Listen to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now back to the Get Ready for the Future show.
And straight talk today, and certainly in the coming weeks on the Get Ready for the Future show about the coronavirus contraction. We've spent half of the show talking about that today, and we do want to say thanks to our Facebook viewers watching today and commenting, Laverne and Gary, David, and Corley. We thank you for your comments, and if you have a question for us on Facebook Live, be sure to send that one in as well, and we will do our best to address it. Our topic today on the Get Ready for the Future show is about debt and avoiding debt like the plague and building towards your financial independence. And I think it's very timely. It's always timely to talk about, but it does have great parallels with what's going on today. I really thought about this early on when we started talking about people staying home from work. Mm-hmm. And not going to restaurants and the damage that was going to do for people. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're very blessed here to receive that paycheck, whether we're here or not. Now, certainly I couldn't leave for 6 months, and I don't think you guys would continue to pay me. But we do have, a lot of people do have salaries that even if they aren't in the office, they're going to be able to be paid. But we do know a lot of people, if you don't show up, you're not getting paid. So there's a pinch right now, whether it's a damage to your income or an outright elimination of it on a temporary basis. And I thought about that and how debt can really rear its ugly head in situations like that. Because if you're trying to find a way to pay the bills, and maybe you even have savings, but a certain amount of it every month has to go to make a payment on a car or make a minimum payment on a credit card, that really significantly puts you in more of a pinch. And it really got me thinking about the importance of not having debt around. And we think about it because of the interest that you pay over time, and it's better to pay with cash, and all those things are true, but it's about cash flow. It really comes back to, especially when you need it for things like groceries and keeping the utilities paid, debt can really hamper that.
So you said a lot of things there, Scott, and I want to touch on several of them. Number one, I think it's important for all of us to realize that businesses are in the economy too. Mm-hmm. It's not just the individuals, it's the business. And those businesses, if their economy is impacted by this, then that is basically a domino effect into the employees. And so you've got to think about the impact on small business that this can have, and even on large businesses that this can have. Now, some large businesses, like the retail stores, they're going to do really well because that's where people are getting stuff and people are flocking there trying to get, their supplies and all of that type of thing. They're seeing their stock prices actually go up. So that is a big deal. But the other thing that I think is important in what you said there, Scott, is that it's really easy at this particular point in time and say, well, okay, my paycheck got interrupted, or I'm making less money at work, or whatever the case may be. Let me pull out the plastic. Let me pull out the credit card. Let me address this issue that way, as opposed to finding other ways to do that. And it's even easier for you to go, oh, let me figure out how I can pull some money out of my 401k plan, which has a devastating effect on your future situation. Now, if you don't have any choice, that's one thing. But oftentimes you've got lots of other choices.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree that there many times are other choices. And let me talk about the 401k thing first. I hear all the time, well, I'm paying myself back the interest. I'm not paying it to the credit card company or whatever. Just you're missing an opportunity. If you withdraw from your 401k right now, the markets are down. We've already talked about they're down far enough that we're into bear market territory. So you're going to be selling at a low, which breaks the number one rule of investing. And as you get that, put back in over time, you've missed the opportunity for that money to have that rise back up from whatever the low point is that we hit. So you've sold at a low, and I can pretty much guarantee you that as you pay that money back in, it's going to go in at higher points in the future.
Well, the other thing, guys, that we've all seen this, if you take a loan on your 401k and then you lose your job, then all of a sudden that loan comes due. Yeah. And no,
it's taxable to you.
No, you don't have to pay it back, but you get the tax and the penalty because you couldn't pay it back.
Yeah. So I think too, as I continue to think about this situation, how nice would it be, or is it, if you think about it in your own personal situation, to have an emergency fund right now?
Yeah.
When you think about having a cash savings account, and I think that's joined at the hip when it comes to paying expenses, especially in a situation like this. You're going to go to your income first to pay your expenses. So if the income is reduced, where do you go next? You don't want to go, as John and Janet have clearly pointed out, to your 401k, Chad. If you have some cash savings, and I haven't had to use mine right now, but man, I have thought about it. I've thought about it. Man, it's so nice to have that there.
Yeah, and it's a different mentality. Yeah. You're sitting here with a different mentality, and since sports have been canceled, we're going to use a little sports analogy right here. I use in the
I'd count on it from you.
I know. In the clients that we've met with, sometimes we'll use this analogy of if you played sports in the past, you understand the difference between playing behind in a ball game and playing ahead.
Yeah.
And when you do not have that non-mortgage debt, so we'll say consumer debt, and you don't have the emergency fund established, you're basically playing behind in the ball game.
Yeah.
But when you get on the other side of that consumer debt, and then you also have that emergency fund, now you're playing ahead. And that momentum that you have, that focus that you have, even when a turnover like this downturn, you get to take advantage of it. And turnovers, of course, in a ball game, they hurt either whether you're behind or ahead in the ball game. But it's a lot different when you're playing ahead. You can absorb some of those turnovers.
When you say that, I think about game plan. Because when you think about watching a game on TV, how many times do the announcers say when they're behind 7, well, they got to stick to their game plan.
Yep.
When they're down 14, they got to stick to the game plan. But at some point, you don't stick to the game plan. They're throwing the football over the field because they're playing from behind. I think it goes back to the game plan, which in your financial lives is your financial plan.
Absolutely. And I want to give people some encouragement for just a moment because, here we are talking about paying off debt in a time when people are scared, and they're going, I don't know if I'm going to have a job next week. I don't know if I'm going to have a check next week, et cetera. But let me tell you what we've seen in the past on this. I think everybody would agree that as far as our ability to remember in recent history, 2008 is the worst time most people out there working have seen in the markets. And so what we found when you look at the rate of credit card debt in this country, and it was growing from the time that credit cards were created, and then you get into the fall of 2008, and what you see is this sharp decline. And when you look at that, you go, wait a minute, 2008 was horrible in the markets, and people were losing their jobs, and they were getting downsized. But in spite of that, they figured out a way to pay off debt. And what that tells me is that when you're backed into a corner, you can do this because people got scared and people got serious and they paid off their debt. I hope and pray, frankly, that that's what happens from this, that people get a little bit of a wake-up call that, we've been living life a little too loosely as far as our finances are concerned. And so now's the opportunity, like when we're talking about student loans, for example. They've already made the call on that interest for right now is not a deal on student loans. That's something that you're not going to have to worry about paying. For some of you, that's a few $100s a month. So if your income is not impacted negatively through this whole coronavirus situation, then you continue to pay that or take that extra money and pay it on a credit card, but use it to get yourself in a better situation financially. I understand that they're wanting to do this for economic stimulus and all of that, but it's also about giving you a break. And if you really want a break, you pay down your debt. So use that money wisely.
I think about this situation, and I think about being in defense mode, not maybe on the markets or whatever, because you're out of control on that. Be in defense mode about where you've gotten to at this point in your life. Don't add more debt. Try to be as virulent as this virus is in terms of trying to avoid that situation in your own personal finances, because adding more debt will only cripple you into the future. You've got to avoid doing that at all costs. Now, clearly, if you don't have any other choice and it's down to eating and that type of thing, okay, then you've got to do what you've got to do. But there are a lot of options that you can look at and a lot of things that you can take advantage of. And Scott, just some news coming on online here. The Trump administration is proposing their stimulus package to combat the economic fallout from this in 2 rounds of $500 billion each. The White House hopes to send out its first round of checks on April 6th and the second round of checks on May 18th. It will base payments on income level and family size, according to a document that was released today. Beyond direct payments, the government is looking to set aside $50 billion for the ailing airline industry, as well as $150 billion. Yeah, $150 not going to do much for other distressed sectors. It was not immediately clear which industries would be covered in that. But clearly what's going on is the government has gone to the faucets and they've begun to start turning them on. And here's going to come this flood of money. Now, is that good for us long-term in our country's situation? No. Probably not. But you do what you got to do to fight another day. And I think that's where we are. If we can get some relief on this current situation from that, then that makes that a little bit more palatable.
John, do you remember, because we were both in the industry at the time, do you remember when we all got checks from the Bush administration?
Yes,
I don't remember exactly what year, but it was early 2000s. Yeah. And we all got checks from the Bush administration, and the deal that we would say as financial advisors was, what'd you buy with it? Because everybody, and they had an immediate answer, everybody went and bought something. Don't do that. Get yourself in better shape financially. Pay off your debt, add it to your savings, but put yourself in a position to win. Don't buy more stuff that you're not even going to use 6 months from now.
Yeah, there is, you could say, well, I'm trying to help the economy. Well, there's lots of ways to help the economy by taking care of paying off debt and making sure that you don't have those debt payments going to something else. And then you can use that freed up money to actually help the economy.
So I got to admit something to you guys. I went to Sam's Club the other day.
Did you buy toilet paper?
I did not. We have some. I'm not a hoarder. I'm not. I'm not indulging.
I'll be around to your house. You're just around the block from me, so
no panic buying here. I was curious. Was the main reason I went. I actually didn't expect to stop because I thought the parking lot would be way too full. It was not. It was actually. It was actually reassuring for me when I went in there. The shelves were stocked. People were moving around at a slow pace. They didn't all have monster loads in their in their carts. But I think it did drive the point home to me. But that's another, when you talk about don't overspend, don't send yourself into debt in this situation. I'm going to echo what the governor said. Don't panic buy. Don't if you can't afford to get all of those groceries, because that crossed my mind. I mean, are you putting this on a credit card, or do you have the cash flow to get $600 worth of groceries at Sam's? You know, so just another thought there. We'll have one more break and be back with the final segment after this.
At Gen Wealth, one of our standards is that we're life changers. We believe one of the best ways to change your life is to educate yourself. George Washington Carver said that education is the key that unlocks the golden door of freedom. Let that soak in for just a moment. Think about the changes that you can make by learning more, specifically learning more about your money. We are passionate about education. We believe that it has the potential to change not only one life, but generations to come.
There's always been power in standing up for what you believe in, challenging the status quo, and never accepting the ordinary. What about the rest of your life? Will you settle? Or will your retirement be more? More fun, more family than finances, more than just investments. Connect with us at Gen Wealth and harness the power of more.
With more straight talk about retirement, investments, and your money on the Get Ready for the Future show.
Live streaming on Facebook and on YouTube, the Get Ready for the Future show, and also on radio on Saturday mornings all across the state of Arkansas. Glad to have you with us. Back for our final segment. We want to spend a little bit of time here before we go talking about how we are responding here at GenWealth to the coronavirus pandemic and the response to it, and whether it's market related or client related or event related. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I did want to start the segment by mentioning that we have actually had some media outlets here recently reach out to us. I think that not to overstate or understate our importance in that, but they also have a lot of time to kill these days.
Especially the sports talk shows.
Especially the sports talk shows. There's not a lot on for them to talk about right now. So they have reached out to us, different radio stations, and we've been on as recently as this morning. John, you were on one, and I was on one as well, and we are wanting to get the message across to anyone watching that we are willing to do that. As to try to provide a voice to this chaos that's happening, particularly from the market standpoint of things. So we're available for that. However, we are scaling back on some of our more social gatherings and our client meetings, and I want to let you guys talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we first of all, the first thing that we had to do was we had a client appreciation event that we had scheduled for a couple of weeks back, and we are a week or so back.
It's Friday the 13th.
Yes, it was on Friday the 13th, and we postponed that, and so we've done that. The second thing that we are doing, if you are an existing client of GenWealth Financial Advisors and you have a review or you have a need to actually deal with our staff, we're asking you that you do that by phone and by email, if at all possible. Now, we will still see you if you absolutely need to come in. Without a doubt, we'll see you. But it's just we're trying to do our part to promote this social distancing. Not that we're engaging in that in the room here today.
I thought about that when we got on the air today, but it is a small table.
Yeah, it is, and we're all family, so it's okay. It's okay, but
less than 10 people.
The bottom line of it is that if you don't need to come in to see us, then let's do it by phone, or we can do it by video conference. And Janet, for new clients that are trying to come in and get their portfolios established, or to actually come in and get a game plan, we're still seeing those folks, but we're doing it with the abundance of caution, being sure that we clean all of our facilities that they're going to be meeting in on a meeting by meeting basis.
Everything from the chair that you sit in to the door handle that you might touch, all of those things are being cleaned between every meeting. So we're being very meticulous about that. And so again, it's do what you're comfortable doing. Follow your gut feeling on whether you need to be out. If you're somebody who is more susceptible for health reasons to coronavirus issues, then we can do some things otherwise. We can do things over video if we need to, but we are having those appointments for new clients coming in. But I also want to take a moment to talk about the workshops, because last week we talked about upcoming events that we had planned to have in El Dorado and in Hot Springs. And we wanted to honor, what needs to be done in protecting people and keeping them safe from getting sick in terms of all of the social distancing. And so we have canceled workshops for now until future notice as far as live and in-person workshops. However, what we are looking to do, and there will be more information coming on this, since we have the ability to do Facebook Live on the radio show, why not do a workshop on Facebook Live? So we're working out the details. We will keep you informed of when we will do what topics, so that information, that education that we are so focused on providing to you is still going to be available. It will just be in a social distancing format for you. So more news to come on that. Just stay tuned with us here on Facebook.
So changes, but we are still open and we are still available to anyone. So do want to encourage anyone, if they are an existing client or not, if they would like to contact us for any reason to ask any question, they can do that at 501-653-7355.
One more thing about that: should there be an edict from the Trump administration to everybody just shelter in place, we at GenWealth still have the ability to work with you and help you. We have the means for our advisors to actually work from home. We have a business continuity plan in place, and we are executing that plan in phases. And so if it ramps up to that, as long as the markets are open, we can still do business with you if you have a need. And certainly if you just need to talk about some things, then we have the ability to do that wherever we are. So it's wonderful to be in a modern age of technology. And man, this has come so far from the stone knives and bearskins that I used to deal with a long time ago.
I'm very grateful that something like this didn't hit in times when we didn't have the technology to deal with it like we do now. I mean, frankly, we could, as Gen Wealth team members, we could talk to a client at any point from our cell phone from any location, and you don't know on the other end that we're not sitting in the office, because we've got our laptop in front of us and we've got everything we need right there, and you're calling the office phone number too to get to us. So technology has put us in a situation where we're ready and able to deal with this in whatever form that may require.
I think, quite frankly, in my opinion too, that is why the government's response, they were willing to be so extreme, because there are ways to handle things other than going to the office and being in public. We have just a few minutes left. I do want to think about one question. We were talking about being on the radio this morning at different radio stations, John and I. I was asked the question, what should we be doing? I think we talked a little bit about the markets and the condition of it and where we think it's headed and the time frame and all of that. But for an individual investor, I thought that was a good question. What should I be doing? And the answer is it depends. It depends on where you are, how you're currently invested. But it all comes back to, do you have a plan? Because if you had a plan before this began, I think that's very important to point out. If you had a financial plan and an investment strategy before this began, you should still adhere to that investment strategy and that financial plan.
Scott, I don't want people to make the same, I'm going to call it the 2008 mistake. I can't tell you how many people I heard that were young that they said, well, I just stopped putting money in my 401k because it sucked so bad. That would be their expression about it. It was so terrible, I just stopped putting money in it. Don't do that. That's the wrong thing to do. As a matter of fact, you were buying shares 40-50% cheaper at that particular point in time than they were when things were good. And so don't make that same mistake. I always believe, Janet, that you always look to people who have been there before you to get some guidance if you are in uncharted territory, and we can offer that.
I would encourage you, when you look at your 401k and you kind of feel that deflated feeling, I would encourage you to look at a different column than what you're looking at. You're looking at the dollar amount in your account. You need to look at the number of shares of whatever it is that you're purchasing, okay? That when you're investing each month, you're buying shares in something, probably multiple somethings, but you're buying more shares. Look at how many shares you have this month compared to how many shares you had last month. It's more shares. You're doing what you're supposed to do. So just keep buying shares. Look at that column, not the dollar amount. Now, I will give one exception to that. If you are coming up to the point of retirement in the short-term future, it is critical that you meet with an advisor soon. I actually had a new client of Gen Wealth reach out to me this morning and thank us for what we did in terms of putting his plan together before this happened. And because we went conservative with some of those dollars, not with everything, but with some of those dollars. And he was very grateful for having done that prior to the downturn. You've got, the downturn's not done yet. So, yes, you may have lost some, but if you're getting ready to retire, you've got to prepare for the rest of what's coming.
And I would say that the volatility that we have right now, the circumstances that we have right now, make it imperative for you to have a plan. If you needed a plan before, you dang well need a plan now. Right. You absolutely need a plan now. So I think it's important, and that's why we continue to open our doors to new clients, because we understand how critical it is for those folks to have a plan.
So I want to go back to Chad when we were talking about playing from behind and having that game plan. When you played sports, I bet you were told don't look at the scoreboard either. Just stick to the game plan, do what you're doing, execute. So back to Janet's point, don't look at that account value right now. I look at every client account. That's our bell. It almost took me by surprise. I hadn't heard that in a while. That's our bell. I know that we're wrapping it up, right? But so this is a good take-home point for you. I look at all of my clients' accounts except for one. My own.
Yours.
I'm not looking at my account balance. I'm not looking at the scoreboard right now. I'm just sticking to the plan.
Absolutely. And depends on what quarter you're in, obviously. Depends on what moves you need to make at this point. But all in all, if you're sticking to the fundamentals, and I think that's a good time as we slow down as a society, as we get isolated, go into quarantine, whatever you want to call it, take some time to look at your own situation and find out where you're at and what you could be, and setting yourself up to be a winner, because there's going to be winners and losers throughout this thing. Set yourself up to be a winner in this thing.
Well, we started talking about this, calling it the coronavirus contraction, and we borrowed that from Brian Westbury, but it is, as we wrap up, a contraction. It is a bear market. It could be a recession, but we do continue to believe that once this thing is handled, the pandemic is in the rearview mirror, that it could be a very sharp recovery.
It could very well be a sharp recovery. We don't know, and you don't know. So the best thing you can do is just hang on and make a decision. You have a very clear decision here. This is all very, very clear to me. You can choose fear or you can choose facts, and that's all there is to it. And if you choose fear, then you will go the way that most people who have chosen fear in the past, the way that they went, and they hurt themselves in this type of downturn before. Or you can choose facts and look at the facts and get in touch with the facts and thrive off of those facts. Janet?
Quick giveaway for you. If you will email us, info@getreadyforthefuture.com. If you need some help getting together a debt snowball, we have that we can send out for you. Just send us an email.
Our advisor's always here to talk. Again, the number 501-653-7355. Any question that you have, client or non-client, we are here for you. That's going to do it for this week's Get Ready for the Future show. As always, we thank you for being with us, and we'll talk to you again next week.
The Gen Wealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 501-653-7355. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Gen Wealth Financial Advisors is an Arkansas-registered investment advisor with securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.